Okay, so for this particular post map, we're going to talk about the different types of boundaries, and then I guess you could say slash borders, okay, which to me they're interchangeable. Okay, so we're going to actually start off with kind of grouping our two different types of boundaries. Okay, so I'm just going to write up here boundary types. Okay, and there's two types of boundaries. You've got natural boundaries. Okay, and natural boundaries are going to include things like mountains, desert, and water. Okay, and we're gonna put examples of those. Okay, and then your other types of boundaries are artificial. So if natural is just kind of, what is naturally there, it's physical features that exist, then artificial, who put those boundaries there? Men. Yeah. Okay, so people put those there. All right, so there's also three types of those. Okay, there's geometric. There's cultural, and there's political. Okay, and we'll mark those three as well. Okay, so something that you do kind of need to keep in the back of your head is that oftentimes, especially throughout this unit and especially with your country, when your boundaries change, a lot of times it's because they were artificial to begin with. Right, because if the Himalayas are a boundary and those are one of your boundaries, it's natural for that to be there. It feels okay for that to be a boundary. But when somebody draws that line on the map, it's kind of like, well, I kind of maybe feel like that line should be a little bit further north or a little bit further south. Okay, so this is your artificial ones are the ones that are changing. Okay, so let's do the natural borders first because those are the easiest. So for my mountain borders, I'm just going to draw those on in green. So I'm going to underline my mountains in green, and then I'm going to draw those on in green. So I'm just going to do one example of this, and it's one that you actually just recently put on your map. But it separates Asia from Europe. Yep, and it's the Ural Mountains. Okay, because this way to the east, which some of you don't know, is Asia. And this way to the west is Europe. Okay. And then for a desert border example, I'm going to use, I don't know what just happened. I'm going to use orange. Okay, and the one I'm going to do is over in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so I'm just going to put some dots at the bottom of Saudi Arabia there. Okay. So that is the Rub, R-U-B, Al, A-L, Khali. I'm using orange. K-H-A-L-I, Rub Al Khali. Okay, so that's a desert border. Okay, so that separates the country of Saudi Arabia and everything else on the peninsula. Okay, so you could say Saudi Arabia, Yemen. You could say Saudi Arabia, Oman. Okay, so whichever one you want to put. I'm going to put Oman because it's, shorter. Okay. And then for my water, I'm going to do that in blue. And I'm going to do a couple of water borders just because you could have really, really big water borders like over where Australia is. Okay, so Australia. So like over here would be the Pacific Ocean. Okay, so you could have borders like that. I mean, that's definitely easy. Australia's like, yes, this is Australia. Everybody else is like, yep, that's Australia. Like, it's separated from everybody because there's this big, huge ocean. It feels natural. It's right. Okay. But then sometimes you can have skinny little borders, like rivers. Okay, like the Rio Grande. Right, that separates the U.S. and Mexico. Okay, and then sometimes you can have borders that are lakes. Okay, so like the Great Lakes. Okay, to the north, that's Canada. To the south, it's the U.S. It's agreed upon. It feels natural for it to be there. Okay, so those are my water borders. All right, now let's talk artificial. Okay, so this is where things sometimes get a little tricky. So let's see, for geometric, I'll do that. Oh gosh, I'll do it in this darker green here. Just, it doesn't matter what color you use. Okay. All right. So geometric boundaries are lines. They're straight lines. Okay. And these are the ones that cause all the drama. Okay. So we actually have one between us and Canada. So just a straight line right there. Okay. Anybody know what that one's called? In between the U.S. and Canada, that green straight line I drew.
Oh, isn't it one of the something parallel?
Yeah. Anybody know the number? What?
38.
What'd you say?
45.
Oh, close. 49. That's the 49th parallel. Remember, parallel's latitude, flat. Okay. So that's a geometric boundary. Okay. It's what Canada and the U.S. agreed upon. Okay, now, here's the thing, though, about that particular border. We also call that border an antecedent border. Okay, so I'm going to kind of move things around here just a little bit. Scoot it over. Okay, so antecedent. A-N-T-E-C-E-D-E-N-T. Antecedent. Okay, so that is for the parallel. All right, here's why. This is a border that's agreed upon, okay, before settlement. Okay, so here's what happens. Not a lot of people live there yet. Okay, Canada and U.S. are ironing out, like, what's yours and what's mine, okay? So they decide, all right, we'll just split it at the 49th parallel. All right, this is before it's heavily populated there. And now, especially on the Canada side, it is heavily populated there, okay? But they agreed upon that a long time ago, before anybody was really there, okay? Actually, if you go there, it's like you've got forest on one to the north, forest to the south, and then there's like this mowed down line in between them. And then these like stone pillars all throughout. It's kind of strange. But so that's an antecedent. Another way that you could kind of remember that, because it is before settlement. How many are taking Spanish? What's the word for before? Antes. A-N-T-E. Okay, so that's before. All right. Now, for those of you who are not taking Spanish, that means nothing to you, but it'll help some. Okay. So there's another geometric border, and it's really, really heavily guarded. Yes, it's over at the Koreas. So I'm just splitting the Koreas with my green line here. Anybody know what this one is? Yes, this is the 38th. It has another nickname.
The DMZ?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
DMZ. Okay, so that obviously separates North and South Korea. Here, I can zoom in. DMV. Okay, so that's North Korea. And then, of course, that's South Korea. Now, side note on this border, it's also called a militarized border. Which I think makes sense because, you know, if you've ever looked at that border, it is heavily militarized. Okay, so it just means that it's heavily guarded. Lots of people looking at that border. Okay, so that's it for our geometric. Let's look at cultural now. So for cultural, I'll do pink. And I'm actually staying on this side of the world, so I'll just stay over here. Okay, so I'm looking at India. Okay, so India we know is right here. That's like the V. Okay. And then to their west is who? Yes. To their west is Pakistan. To the east is... Ooh. No, I heard it. Yeah. This is Bangladesh. Okay. These are considered cultural boundaries because you have Muslims for Pakistan and Bangladesh. And then who's in India? Yeah, Hindus. Okay, now it took a long time to get that way because Britain used to own all of that. They used to own Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh all together. It was all just one piece, one big chunk of land. Okay, long time of rule. Then, you know, hey, we want our independence. And then Britain's like, okay, peace out. You have your independence. I mean, it wasn't that simple, but that's how we're simplifying it. Okay, so they get their independence, but then they start fighting over, well, who's going to rule, the Muslims or the Hindus? Okay, so after a long time of a little bit of conflict, a little bit of arguing, they just split it. Okay, so they have lots of mass migration just kind of switching sides. Okay, the Muslims go into Pakistan and Bangladesh. At the time, though, Bangladesh was part of Pakistan. Okay, but then, you know, they declare their independence even further. And then Hindus coming into India. Okay, so those are cultural borders. They are also subsequent borders. Okay, so I'm going to add that. Let me scoot this up a little bit. Okay, so subsequent is SUBSEQUENT. Subsequent borders are borders drawn to accommodate ethnicity or religion or language or something along those lines. So borders, let's say borders to, borders drawn to accommodate the people. Okay, so in this instance, it's religion. Okay, so these are going to be borders that are drawn later. Okay, after the people sort of decide, then it's like, okay, border here, border here. Everybody good? We're good. Okay, let's move on. And those have stood the test of time for a while now, since, I don't know, the 50s. Okay. Now, there is a little piece, though, for those of you, and I can't remember if anybody in here does, but if you have Pakistan or India, there's a little piece they fight over called Kashmir. Okay, that is a whole other set of drama. All right, but for the most part, those borders, those subsequent borders that are cultural have stood. Okay. Okay, so that's it for my cultural. Now I'm going to do political. And so for political, I'm going to go to Africa. And I'm going to do those in red. Okay. So Africa, and we'll talk a lot about this, and especially for those of you who have African countries, this is going to mean something for you too. Okay, so you've got lots of different groups in Africa. So these little circles, and I'm not going the whole way, but these little circles are going to represent all of Africa's ethnicities. So pretend I drew those all throughout Africa. Okay, so these are ethnicities in Africa. Okay, so these exist there, right? And then Europe figures out, whoa, Africa has tons of resources and we need them. Let's go take them. Okay, so they come to a meeting called the Berlin Conference. It's in Berlin. That's why it's called the Berlin Conference. Okay, so they come to a meeting. They have a big old map of Africa, and they're like, okay, you draw lines around what you want, and we'll draw lines around what we want. And as long as you can control your territory, you can have it. Okay, now, do you think they invited any of the African tribal leaders to that meeting? No. Okay, so what ends up happening then is they start drawing all these straight lines on Africa's map. Okay, and they don't care who is where, who gets along with who speaks whose language. All they care about is the resources that are in those lines. Okay, hence today why Africa is in such constant turmoil, because the Europeans were like, you want your independence? Peace out, you got it, because we've already used up all your resources, so we're out of here. Okay, and they don't care who for all these years had been getting along or not. So now you have all these tribes that now remember, okay, we got our common enemy out. Oh yeah, I forgot. I don't like you. Okay. And so now you've got all this civil war that's going on. So remember when we watched Parag Khanna's video a couple of class periods ago, and he talks about, I think we're going to see a lot of new countries in Africa. This is why. Okay. So these straight lines here, all right, these are the European colonial borders. And we also call these superimposed. Okay, superimposed borders are borders drawn over existing borders. Bless you. Okay, so before the Europeans got there, they had their own borders. They were doing just fine, coexisting, doing their thing. They already had trade alliances with other tribes. They had a government system and economic system. But Europe ignores all of those and draws their own lines. Okay, so that's why we get such drama today. Okay, so any questions over those borders? No. Okay, so one last thing that I want to add to this is some state morphology. Okay, and so for this, all we're going to do is just shade in little spots, 5 actually, little spots on the map. Okay, so here's what we're doing. All right, so off to the side here, I'm just going to write morphology. Okay, and so morphology is just state shapes. Okay, and we care about these because this can either make an area really easy to rule or a little bit more complicated. Okay, so we're going to look at 5 shapes. We're going to look at compact. We're going to look at elongated. We're going to look at prorupted. Perforated, what am I missing? And fragmented. Okay, compact first. Compact is in Europe. So a really good example of a compact state is Poland. Okay, so let me zoom in a little. Okay, so over here, right next to where I wrote Europe, whoops. Okay, this is Poland. It's little. I'm shading it in. Okay. So compact is actually pretty easy to control. Why?
Wait, what did you? Oh, you went
Poland. It's just Poland.
Because all the people are in one place.
Well, yes, but let's think about it. Compact.
It's small.
It's smaller. What?
It's lesser area to like watch over.
Yes. And it's all just kind of, it's not a true circle, right? But it's kind of circular and it's just all right there. Okay, nothing is too far from the capital. Nothing is too in from the borders. It's just nice and neat and compact. Okay, there's lots of examples of compact, but for our map, we're just going to put Poland. Okay, elongated. Let's shade in Italy for elongated. No, I'm sorry. No. I'm going to use that for something else. Let's shade in Chile. Okay, so it's just real skinny right here. Now, while it is kind of skinny, this is a little bit more difficult to rule because it's real long, okay? And Chile is also really mountainous, so it's kind of difficult to rule because in mountains, little groups can form, okay, that are kind of like, we're not going to listen to your laws. Okay, so they kind of start forming their own issues. So if anybody has Chile in here, that's an issue. Okay. Okay, and then for perforated, let's use Italy. So let me write Italy over here. So just shade in the boot. Now, Italy is perforated. There we go. Italy is perforated because it's like somebody took a hole punch and punched out 2 holes inside Italy. What's one? Anybody know? Vatican City. And one more. It's little bitty. Yeah, I heard it. Somebody said it. San Marino. Yeah. Okay, teeny tiny little holes just cut through Italy and made 2 separate states. Okay, so that's why Italy is perforated. Okay, prorupted. We're going to use Thailand for prorupted. Okay, so Thailand is just right here. Now, anytime, you know how when we sketch map, I always say, oh, it's got like a little arm that comes out. Okay, anytime a country has a little arm that's out in everybody's business trying to, cut in line, right? That's a proruption. Okay, it's like they're trying to, a lot of times countries will have proruptions because they're trying to not be landlocked. Okay, so like D-Rock has a proruption, it just kind of sticks its arm in between a couple of countries so it can have access to the coast. Okay, so that's what a proruption is. Okay, and then last for our fragmented states, we're going to use the Philippines. And fragmented is exactly that. It's in pieces. That is the most difficult to govern, okay, because it's in pieces. It's really easy for different groups to kind of form and not really want to be with the government. So like places like Indonesia, the Philippines, Japan is fragmented. And you've got some others that are not all islands that are fragmented too. Like, let me think. I think Norway. Oh, the U.S., yeah, because Alaska's not really connected. And then there's Hawaii. Okay, so those are fragmented pieces. All right, so that can cause some trouble, all right, for some countries. Okay, that's it. That's our map. Okay, so let's load that as boundaries, the limits of the state.